Hey everyone, welcome to Life Behind Drums. I am joined today by Mike Truscott, the drummer from British rock band Wishbone Ash. When was the first time you became aware of a drum kit?
Aware of a drum kit? That's a good question, actually. Wow. Do you know, probably actually really aware, the first drum lesson I ever had
When
was
was that?
probably, that was in 1987, 1988, maybe.
Okay.
So the reason actually I started playing drums is a strange one. When I was at school, you kind of, if I remember it rightly, you kind of went into like an assembly, like a hall. And it was a bit of a like hands up thing to say who'd like to play this, or I'd like to play that,
Yeah.
I'd like to play that. So clarinet came up and I'm like, no. Various other things came up, no. And then trumpet came up and my brother played the trumpet. So I thought, well, I'll play the trumpet because I'll be better than he will be. So it was kind of a competitive thing. But then they kind of went you and you, and I didn't get picked. So then the next thing that came up was drums. And secretly, the only real reason I wanted to play an instrument was because you used to get out of class for 20 minutes. And so I said, I'll do drums. And they went, okay, you can do drums. So I thought, okay, I don't even know what that is, but I'll give it a shot. And so I'd go to this drum lesson. That would probably be the first time knowingly. I mean, I guess I'd seen them on telly on Top of the Pops and all that kind of stuff, but certainly knowingly came across one. So yeah, that was at junior school.
The first time I came across drums it was funny. It was back in 1998. Showing my age
Okay.
here. I was at the stage of falling out of bed. So at that point, my mum put a mattress down, hoping that that would break the fall.
Yeah.
But then I bounced off the mattress into the wardrobe, then sprained my ankle. So
Ugh.
at a friend's wedding, because I was then couldn't walk. I was stationed. I was just watching the band. I then pointed to the stage and
Yeah.
said, "I want to learn that." And then at the age of 7, I met Steve, Laffy, and yeah, it started from there, really.
Started from there. That's cool, isn't it? How these things kind of
Yeah.
happen. That's cool.
Now, I got my drum kit, my first one, from my mother's Keep Fit teacher, but at the ages of maybe about 8, and it was one of these budget ones from China called Thunder.
Yeah, I know those kits. Yeah.
Yes, looking back now, it's a piece of shit, but never mind.
Well, it gets you underway though, doesn't it? That's the
It
key thing.
does. So, but when did you get your first one, or was adulthood
No,
the
I got my. So I started off as most people do, hitting like ice cream tubs and pots and pans. And then my parents said, "Well, okay, you've stuck at it, so we'll get you a snare drum." So I had the snare drum, and I remember it was a Kestrel snare drum. It was called, but it had a pearl snare stand, which I still have to this day. It still works perfectly. That's not the snare drum, but the stand. And so um, so that was that to start with, and then I'm gonna guess, I can't remember the year, but I'm gonna guess it was late 80s, early 90s that my dad came home. I can remember him coming up the drive in his car, and as he turned, he used to come up our drive like a bat out of hell, and there was gravel and stones on our drive, and he'd always come up the drive, and there was like a turn to the left, and he would always like spray the stones, and my mum would go crazy at him, and he just found it funny, and my brother and I found it funny.
yeah?
And but that day he didn't do that. He came up very steadily around the corner, and all I could see was a bass drum with Premier written on the side of it. And he'd been and bought me a drum kit, and it was a Premier APK, a black 12, 13, 16 and a half as it was at the time. It was like a pre-international size. It was, I mean, things had changed then, but yeah, those drums were still around. 22 by 16 or 14, I guess. I don't know if that came with a snare drum. It probably did. And yeah, various stands, and there were some cymbals on there and stuff. But the kit primarily was a Premier APK. Yeah.
And I presume, short of setting up, I presume straight away you sat behind it, practiced on it, and couldn't and did not stop.
Yeah, basically, I kind of just, it was a funny thing with drums, bearing in mind I didn't really choose it for the fact that I thought I'd like it. I found myself, really into it. And I just found that there was a certain amount of it. I think initially I took to it quite naturally. So that always helps, I think, if you kind of do have a little bit of natural, so, whether it's a sport or a musical instrument or whatever. And then by the time it started to kind of get a little bit tough, I think I'd decided that I don't care how tough this gets. I want to do this, So I do remember I played that kit to death. I think I played it that night till about 10, half 10, until my parents kind of went, I think it's time to go to bed, And yeah, and I just practiced every day. Not always what I was told to practice, but I always practiced something. I was playing all the time, Yeah, good memories of that.
And what were your biggest influences growing up? Obviously, we'll get to how you ended up in the band you currently are in
Yeah.
later on. But what was your biggest? What were some of your biggest influences?
Do you know what, to
On the
start with,
kit.
the influences weren't really drummers, actually, in terms of I didn't really look at a band or a group or anything I saw on telly and said, who's that? Or, it wasn't like I was singling people out. I was just doing that with music in general. I just would listen to, well, again, the regular shows on telly at the time, Top of the Pops, so you'd watch the top 40, then you'd listen to the top 40 on a Sunday. So, the early influences were just music in general. It wasn't necessarily a particular drummer, but there obviously were songs that maybe caught my ear more than others. So I do remember hearing like Run to the Hills by Iron Maiden. Didn't have a clue who they were, but I just loved it. And the Tom Phil and all that kind of stuff obviously got into my brain. Phil Collins, In the Air Tonight, it's a bit of a classic, but that was massive. And I guess he would later on become probably one of the first drummers, if not the first drummer, where I went, wait, that I like his playing, I like him, and so that wasn't just his songs and his music. I actually then started to realize, oh, he's the drummer, and then I started to discover Genesis, and so that led me down a completely different musical path. But yeah, so a lot of it was kind of just music in general at the time. But I think if I look back, if there's certain people I would remember, Phil Collins is definitely one of them. I think Steve White is one of them, from the Style Council, because I was listening to things like Walls Come Tumbling Down, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that it was Paul Weller. I'd not heard of Paul Weller by then. It was just this band on a mixtape, on a Now That's What I Call Music tape or something. So yeah, the early influences of playing weren't necessarily because of a particular drummer. It was just I liked songs. I just liked music in general. So yeah.
Before my battery starts giving me attitude, I'm going to pause it here and back after that. Right. Yeah, when people ask me my influences, I'm like, I like all the stuff before before computer music came in, all the real instruments. So my taste, even though I was born a decade later, was 70s, 80s, not so much 90s, and then lost interest in the 2000s.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, every decade's got something. I think it's you can go back to the 40s particularly and hear great jazz and swing, and those guys. The 50s, obviously rock and roll, and 60s. There's always something there to offer. I mean, even the 90s, that was kind of my teen years. So I was I was in that Oasis Blur melee, and I was in the Oasis camp at the time. I think Blur kind of grew on me later. I didn't really get it to start with. I kind of thought it was a bit, I don't know what I thought it was. Maybe not as serious as Oasis, but actually now when I listen back, I'm like, actually, that's incredible. You know, it's great, but just very different, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up really big with that indie scene as it was then, Suede, the Seahorses, Oasis, you know. And again, some incredible drummers in that really probably get overlooked and underrated because they're viewed as just an indie band or something, you know. I mean, Steve White's brother, Alan White in Oasis, I mean, he's phenomenal, you know. Yeah, there's some great players from every era, but I know what you mean. Music certainly,
Yeah.
I think, changed a lot in the early noughties, and then as we kind of go through to where we are now, I think streaming and, you know,
I go as far as say laziness.
yeah, I mean, do you know, I think there is a lot of good music out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of ironic. I think one of the things I was having this discussion with a guy the other day at our final show we played down in London, and I said the great thing is about streaming is that it makes so many more things available. You
It
know,
does.
you don't have to get up and go down to HMV or a local
Yeah.
record store or something to go and find it. And then if you can find it, you can buy it and wait till you go home. You know, you could literally say something to me now. I could go straight onto Apple Music or Spotify or whatever people use and find it, and I could listen to it straight away, which is great. But then in the same way, I think that streaming has
Yeah.
diluted the music industry in
It
that
has
sense,
done. It has done.
you know. And that's a shame, you know. So somewhere there's a happy medium, and I don't think we're there with it yet. But
No.
hopefully, with the advent of people buying more vinyl and things like that, maybe people will start to value it a little bit more as a physical thing as opposed to
Yeah.
just a digital thing, you know.
And also, the digital platforms don't pay the artists that much
No,
at
they
all.
don't. Completely different game, isn't it? I mean,
If that was if that was a regular 9 to 5 job, you would be in violation of
oh, you wouldn't be meeting minimum wage, no.
no violation of
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's changed a lot, really, hasn't it? You know, and I think then that's why you see it in the cost of merchandise at gigs now and the cost of the gigs themselves. You know, they're no longer £30. I mean, I know there's inflation and things change,
Yeah.
but a gig is now, you know, in some cases super expensive. You know, hundreds of pounds as opposed to 30 quid. You know, I mean, those gigs are still out there. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, see a band called Cardinal Black a little while ago. Awesome band, great guitarist, guy called Chris Buck. Went with a friend, and I think the ticket was 25 quid, you know,
Okay.
and it was phenomenal. So great gigs are out there for decent money.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want to go see Fleetwood Mac or Genesis or Pink or yeah, you know, you're gonna blow a shed load of money, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You
Yeah, it's
definitely are.
changed a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Music industry has. I didn't think this was possible. Has gotten worse. I didn't think that was entirely possible.
Yeah, do you know what, though? I think it depends on how you want to
The
view
record
it,
labels
really.
the record labels at the top end have always made it insanely impossible. 95% of royalties are pocketed by them, obviously, or a
Yeah.
good percentage of them. But then the streaming services take more from the artists. So I'm like,
Yeah. It's
where's
frustrating, isn't it? Because I
yeah,
think they take a lot, but then the streaming service on the other side, they can argue, gives artists a platform that they maybe wouldn't have had because the likelihood of an artist being signed by an EMI or an MCA or something were maybe so slim. You know, back in
yeah,
the day when you used to send tapes or this and hope that somebody would either take notice, you know, now you can take control of that yourself. You can launch yourself. You can promote yourself. So there's definite positives to it. You
yeah.
know, I certainly wouldn't want streaming to disappear in
No,
that
but
sense.
I would hope that I would love them to pay the artists what they're worth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where things definitely should change. You know, so I think
Yeah,
it's hopefully over time, you know, things will change. But like I say, I mean, you know, even hard copies of stuff now. I mean, I go into record stores and HMVs and all that now, and there's more people mingling and buying records and stuff in there than I've seen for absolutely donkeys. I mean, you know, even I've gotten into the vinyl thing and buying physical. I mean, CDs. I've got thousands of them all surrounding me and stuff. And then, you know, I kind of stopped buying them because of the streaming thing. And then actually the vinyl thing came back round. So now it's a real pleasure again to sit down and make a moment out of listening to an album. You know, it's wonderful. So I've got the room next door to me is just dedicated to that. So I'll sit down and get a coffee or a beer, a glass of wine, whatever, and I'll say, right, what am I gonna listen to? And I will listen to the whole album, and it's great, you know. So yeah,
I do that with Kiss. I have an entire playlist.
Oh, cool.
Just of the Kiss discography, just of that in album order.
Yeah, see, that's cool. I mean, and that's one of the beauties, I guess,
Yeah.
of the streaming thing. Like you say, you can actually create a playlist where it's all, you know, it's not a physical action. So that's where the streaming thing is actually a real positive thing. You can always take your records with you, you know. But it is nice sometimes just to get that physical thing out and read the book and who produced it, who was the drummer, who was the guitarist, all that kind of stuff, you know. But
now, obviously, Wishbone Ash was not your first band.
No, I mean,
so what band were you in that started it from level 1 to gaming term, level 1 to level
Wishbone?
Yeah, level.
Yeah, okay. So all right, so my journey, I guess, starts that initial thing. So I've done the school thing.
Yeah.
You know, I picked up a pair of sticks. Within 3 weeks, I was in a school band, you know, just playing along, doing your thing as everybody does, making a racket. And then I seem to remember I joined, I can't remember what year it was, but I did the school bands thing for a while. Then I joined the City of Leeds youth concert band. They had two bands. There was like the senior one and the junior one. So I started in the junior one, and then a year later I went and joined the senior one. So that was a really good experience in terms of, you know, I liked rock and roll and pop music predominantly. And then suddenly I was in a world where I played some kind of poppy, jazzy kind of stuff, but a lot of it was also very classical. And I found myself having to read these things, and I'm like, I don't really want to do this. But it was a really good thing to do. It taught me a lot about, well, being in a band, you know, particularly when you're in an orchestra or a band like that. It's, you know, how to play. Obviously, you meet other people. A great conductor, actually, that really initially we didn't always get on, but we kind of found our way together. And looking back on it again, I'm really glad that I had this guy in my life, and he taught me a lot. A guy called Aubrey Bezic passed away a few years ago, but a great guy to have as a conductor. Again, one of those people you don't really realize how important he is until years pass, you know. So I guess early on it was kind of concert bands and all that kind of stuff. Then at school there were various covers bands, you know, typical things going in the garage and all that kind of stuff. And was playing anything from the Eagles, the Smiths, you know, Oasis, all that kind of thing. And then eventually I did probably some rock and roll bands, kind of started getting into the corporate world of playing at weddings and all that kind of stuff, which I enjoyed, actually. That was really good fun. And then I kind of started getting a bit of a reputation then for being a deck drummer. So people would just ring me up and I'd do random things. Mostly that was also really good. And then I got into pit orchestras for a little bit, just like Amdram kind of societies, that kind of thing. So that was, again, another completely different avenue where you had to play dots. You had to sometimes, actually, I wouldn't play the dots. I'd play what I thought. And I was lucky to have a conductor in that was okay with that. He was like, yeah, I prefer what you're doing, so do that. But in here, I really need you to play that, you know. So we would have that kind of conversation. So that was playing, you know, all sorts of shows, really, you know, traditional older musicals like, you know, My Fair Lady and Sound of Music, those kind of shows, right through to then modern takes on things like Starlight Express and Joseph and all those kind of things. So that was really cool. And then I think it was about that time I joined Pearl Drums, and I actually worked for Pearl Drums as a sales guy. Okay, so I'd been in musical instrument retail since I was 15, working either Saturday jobs or going full time. So the playing was always, you know, as well as, and So I joined Pearl, and at that point I just turned 23. So I was pretty young actually to go on the road as a sales rep for Pearl. So my playing took a bit of a back seat because suddenly it was like, well, I've just got this dream job of working for the biggest drum company in the world. And ironically, I kind of stopped playing drums, you know. Every now
Oh,
and
wow.
again, I get a phone call and I do something, but then I wouldn't, and then I would, and then I wouldn't. So it became really erratic actually when I would play, until a little further down the line, Mark, who's the guitarist in Wishbone, we'd known each other from working in retail. I was visiting him. He was working at a drum store at the time, which is funny, a guitarist working in a drum store. But and he said to me, "Hey, you don't know anybody who could do this gig? You know, I'm in this band. Our drummer's about to leave." And I joked with him and said, "Oh, I'll do it." And he said, "No, you won't." And I went, "No, you're right, I won't," because I hadn't played for ages. And I said, "Well, do you know what? If you're really stuck, I'll help you out. I'll come in and help you out." So he said, "Well, we are really stuck." So I said, "Okay, well, what is it?" So it was like Whitesnake, Journey, Thunder, Bon Jovi. It was all classic rock covers. It was all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Playing the club scenes, and I wasn't really that kind of drummer really at that point. I was a bit like, don't know about this, but I'll give it a shot. So anyway, I went and did it, and what was meant to be about 3 or 4 gigs to help out ended up being about two and a half years maybe. I didn't leave. So then I had to really change my playing and study those guys. So I really started buying CDs, listening to things. So I was like, all right, Tommy Aldridge, Ian Pace, Steve Smith, all these kind of guys. Yeah. And then so I started to change. I changed my kit, I changed my cymbals, I changed my sticks. So I completely changed how I was playing. So then kind of fast forward a while, I kind of then gone in and out of various kind of bands, Deppin, but I was still working for Pearl. I then went and worked for Yamaha. So this is where it kind of gets weird, because the drummer went and worked for Yamaha and worked for the guitar division of Yamaha. So I got to see a completely different side of the music industry. And in between I was just playing and in and out, Depping. And I was okay with that at that point. The kind of idea of going off and being a touring drummer, I'd kind of left behind, not because I'd given up on it as such, but I was just happy doing what I was doing. I loved working for Pearl and being with Yamaha. I met drummers from all around. I met Omar, I met Gary Husband, I met Todd Zuckerman, I met, Horacio Hernandez, I met, all these great drummers, Mike Mangini. I've been out with them, I've been drinking with them, and I'm thinking like, this is great, So I was actually quite happy with that. Until kind of fast forward, I'd got to that point again where I'd kind of got fed up with people, and people saying, well, I'll do this, or we'll do that, or we'll do this and we'll do that. And then nothing happened. And then you find actually they just gave the gig to somebody else.
Oh, I hate those people. I hate those people.
And I'm like, there was one particular band I was playing with and they had a plan. I said, yeah, that works great. And then I just read on Facebook one day that they'd just given this gig to a guy. And I'm like, I don't mind not getting the gig, but you told me I had the gig. And I just thought, I just don't need this. So that day, I actually put my drum kit up for sale on Facebook. I sold it in an hour, and 2 days later, it was gone. I'd kept snare drums, I'd kept cymbals, but fundamentally my drum kit, I sold it. I got rid of it, and I was fed up. I was like, right, Teddy's out the pram. I'm not playing anymore. And then, so you fast forward to 3 years, I get a phone call from Mark, who's now the guitarist in Wishbone at that point. He joined in 2017, saying, can you play tonight? And I said, what, with you guys? And he said, yeah. I said, no. I said, I'm shopping with my wife in York. And he said, well, we really need you to help out because Joe has got COVID. So this was 2021, the band's first tour since COVID. And at the point where obviously if you tested positive, you still had to isolate. So he had to stop. And he couldn't play his last 3 shows with the band. He was always leaving mid-tour because he just started a family, had a young family, and somebody else was going to take over for the rest of the tour. But these 3 shows needed filling, basically. So I said no. He said, you should. And I said, no, I've not played for 3 years. It isn't just something you walk in and do, And after much deliberation, I agreed to go do a sound check with the band. Luckily, they were playing in Leeds, which is like 20 minutes away from me, So I said, well, okay, we'll do a sound check. And if it doesn't work, there's no offense. I'm not worried about it. You know, we'll just go into town, we'll have a drink and go for a bite to eat. And, you know, unfortunately, the show won't happen. Anyway, so I went and did the sound check. It went well. I played the show in Leeds, which was, you know, seat of the pants stuff after not touching a drum for 3 years. And then I played a show the next day in Bury and a show the next day in Holmfirth at the Picturedrome. And then that was it. And I found myself kind of driving away from the gig going, wow, that's what I always wanted to do. That's the world. And I'm like, well, you know, at least I got to experience it. And I loved it. It was great. I never actually then contemplated the idea would come that you kind of go again a little bit further down the line, that suddenly of February 2022, I'm on a plane going to America because I've just joined the band, you know? So it's kind of it's an odd story, I guess, in that sense. You know, it's not like I come from a line of successful bands that I've played in and played in and played it. I mean, I'm 42, nearly 43. So effectively, I've kind of done it maybe round the other way compared to some people that maybe have an earlier career in their 20s and 30s, maybe playing in a band. And then they kind of go and say, well, I should go get a proper job, you know? I've kind of done the proper job thing. And then at the age of 42, my wife said, if you don't do this now, you're an idiot. You know, this is what you've always wanted to do. And I'm like, yeah, it is, but it doesn't have the security of the proper job. And it's like, well, who cares? Just go and enjoy it. So I said, yeah, let's do it. Yamaha were very, very good to me. They understood why I wanted to go and, you know, go and live the dream, basically. And off I went. So if anything, it's probably a story of, you know, maybe never give up kind of thing. You never know your luck. Yeah. But like I say, I think the big thing for me was that I wasn't in a job that I didn't enjoy. I've always really been in the music industry, but I've just been on a different side of it. And, you know, being on that different side of it is incredibly useful because you learn a lot of things that probably other guys don't necessarily learn, you know? So yeah, it's kind of a very long-winded answer to your question. Maybe not the one you expected, you know, but so yeah, you know, I guess there's a lot of variation of the things I've played and done, but Wishbone is the first thing I've done at this level of touring and, you know, doing that. So yeah, it is, you know, still relatively new to me, I guess.
No, that is not the path that I actually expected.
Yeah,
I'm guessing that's not the one you expected either.
No, not at all. It was yeah, I mean, that day I was just shopping in York with my wife, and we were just having a day out together. And yeah, that was not quite what I expected to happen that day. And then yeah, what came after has just been amazing, really. So, but you know, no complaints.
But obviously for people, your students young, wanting to get to that level, and I guess actually it's everyone's dream to play for a band that big. So what would you say to, let's do it simpler, your younger self at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I guess, you know, it's kind of common for people to say, you know, never give up and always believe in yourself and all that kind of thing. But actually, I think it's more important maybe to realize that there are days when you are going to give up on yourself, and there are days when you think you've had enough. And that's okay. That's all right. You know, everybody has those moments. You know, it's not really defeatist. Actually, it's quite realist. You know, everybody has crappy days. Everybody has crappy weeks. People have crappy months. People have crappy years, you know. And you fall in and out of it. And I think it's very easy to fall in and out of it, particularly when it's something you love so much. And I think I started to get very protective over it because I found that people were kind of messing around with something I cared for a lot. I love drums. I love playing. I love the industry. And I kind of thought, I don't like this. I don't like what people are doing to me and how I'm starting to feel about it. So actually, I would say to anybody that's playing and wants to be a professional player or whatever level they're at, it's really irrelevant, is yeah, there's an element of don't give up, but also don't be surprised on the days when you do feel like giving up. And those days are just the best days to just put your sticks down, walk away from it, and go and do something else. Play on your PlayStation, play on the Xbox, go for a walk, go for a run, have a pint, go for a curry. That is absolutely okay. But at the same time, you've got to acknowledge that someday you're going to have to return, and whatever you've been either finding hard or you've been struggling with, you've got to face up to it, you know?
Yeah.
And that might be a week or a year, but secretly, yeah, don't give up, but also don't worry about having bad days. You know, that doesn't make you bad or a crap player or a loser, or it just doesn't, you know, I mean, just so, and then I guess the other side of it is just to keep playing, you know, keep listening to stuff. And actually, listening probably more important even than playing sometimes, because if you don't lose the love of listening to music, you know, secretly the drumming always goes in, you know.
Yes.
There was a reason why I could walk up to that Wishbone gig. I'd never played with Wishbone Ash before. I'd never even played a song behind a drum kit before, even practicing them, right?
Yeah.
But I turned up to that gig and I knew those songs because I'd listened to them a lot, right? Particularly when Mark had joined the band and I started to go to see the band because, you know, basically my best mates in the band. You know, those songs just started to sink in. I didn't need to play them to be able to learn them. They just, as with, you know, people will relate to that. It sinks in. It's just, you hear it so many times. You can imagine playing The King Will Come. You can imagine what that fill has to be at the beginning, etc. So actually, just always listen. So even if you need to take a break from playing the instrument, I don't think it's even relevant whether it's just drums. It can be any instrument, but just don't stop listening and enjoying music, really. Because as long as you do that, I think you'll always come back to the instrument eventually, you know. But yeah, you know, don't be afraid to take a break from it, you know. I mean, I did, and you know, I was lucky in some ways, you know, fortunate, but I guess I'd also done the work prior to that I could then play, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So
Indeed. The song I'm actually listening to, moderately obsessed with, rather, shall I say, is We Stand as One, mainly because of the strong message.
Okay, yeah.
And
Yeah,
of course, the extremely, dare I say, sexy drum groove.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's a funny one, actually, because that's a groove that I think
it's a groove which shouldn't really be in a rock band, but yet it works.
Yeah, do you know what it does? I mean, when I first joined the band, this is probably going to break your heart, actually. But so when I joined, I was playing that.
Yeah.
And then we were playing. I'm thinking, do you know what? As an exercise, that feels great because obviously it's all, you know, separated.
Yeah.
But we're starting like a live show with this thing, and it obviously, because it starts with the drums, it just felt a little bit, I don't know, it just didn't groove, it didn't move, it didn't give me any bump,
No.
you know. So I remember it was in my first tour. I said, "Can we try something different?" You know. So what I did is I changed it so I would play all hi-hats, but the groove would stay the same, but it would all be played on the kick drum, you know.
Yep.
So instead of it being boom, it was that.
Yeah.
So it had a bit of a, you know, a bit of a shuffle, a bit of a funky jive to it, you know, and it was like, right. So we played it. I remember we were at a sound check in just south of Chicago. We were, what's the name of the theater now? The Arcada Theater. It's an awesome place, massively haunted apparently. And the guys were like, yeah, that's great. That's perfect. That's exactly what it should go like. So it didn't change the groove. Well, it changed the groove, but the fundamentally it was the same. It was still that boom, boom, boom. But instead of it being this separated hi-hat thing, it had a continual kind of going underneath it, which for live worked really well. So hopefully I've not completely destroyed your love of that, but you know.
And I was, I listened. You weren't the one. You didn't play the one on the record, did you?
No, that was Joe.
Ah,
yeah, Joe Crabtree played that. So he, you know, but Joe's technically Joe's, you know, fantastic. He's a fantastic player. Full stop is Joe. but that's kind of very like, you know, that's kind of Joe's thing. I think he's very good at that technical splitting
Yes.
things up, and you know, I tend to approach things. It's not that I can't do that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. I just prefer, particularly live, I prefer to just put something that sits underneath everything and glues it all together. And for me, maybe it was just the way I was playing it. I don't know, but for me, that group
I
didn't.
prefer the bass drum. I prefer the bass drum because that's what you would expect to
Yeah,
do
yeah.
this bass drum.
Well, I think the thing is the top.
What I found with Joe was, I think, yes, this guy is very American.
Oh, that's interesting because he's definitely British.
This
Yeah,
the way he was playing was so big and in American. Motto is go big or go home.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. No,
and
I
it
don't know.
was so almost torturing the drum kit.
Right, yeah. No, I mean Joe's a great. I mean, he's got an amazing feel to him, and he plays.
Yeah.
I think we certainly play very differently in the
Yes.
band, and I've seen him, you know, a couple of times since. And actually, last year we hooked up, and he said, actually, do you know what? It's great. There's things that if I ever did the band again, I would completely nick off you. And I'm like, well, that's good because I've nicked plenty of things off you, you know. And so it's. I think the thing is, I mean, that's the great thing about music, full stop.
Yeah.
I think, you know, particularly drummers, you know, you can take the same song and give it to 6 people, you get 6 different results. You know, I mean, look at what Steely Dan did when they were recording Asia. You know, that was just so many drummers playing all the tracks, as far as I'm aware. That's the story, you know, and then they picked out who they preferred. And it's like, so yeah, you know, it's funny when you do that. I think the comment I seem to get quite a lot is I tend to maybe I'm a bit of a harder hitter than Joe.
Yeah.
I don't tend to, my fills and my kind of playing is maybe not as technical or flash or whatever people want to call it.
I prefer simple and yeah, the old saying, keep it simple, stupid. I mean, it works.
Yeah,
It
I mean, do you
works.
know, it's I think in any band, you know, laying the groove down and just keeping the time is
Yeah.
obviously the fundamental of the reason why you're there as a drummer. You know, that's number one thing. But then also, you know, just in terms of when you're playing a show night after night after night after night, there's an
Yeah.
almost element as well as keeping yourself in good enough form to be able to do that night after night after night after night. You know, so for me, I found my way of doing that. Joe had found his way of doing that, and before him, there was Ray Weston, and there was, you know, the original guy Steve. You know, and um, everybody finds their way of playing the gig, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I saw Joe play loads of times with Wishbone, and he is phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to see him play at all, it's. I mean, obviously you'll see his footage on YouTube and all that stuff. He's awesome. He's really cool.
And how do you deal? I mean, we drummers do have a bit of a challenge when it comes to noise in residential areas.
Yeah.
Um, how do you deal with that? With noise complaints? Have you ever had any or
Luckily, no. Do you know, when I was growing up, my parents' neighbours were great. They understood, and you know, they weren't really bothered about it. And here where I am now, my neighbors are great. You know, I tend to, I mean, during the day, most people are out anyway, so that's when I'll
yeah,
try and sit at the kit and just play a little bit. So I've got an acoustic kit here, and then I've got an electronic kit as well that I can set up if I really need to kind of keep it down. But it's funny. I mean, in between tours and stuff, depending on the gap, I won't play it all because actually I just want a bit of a
right,
break. I need to rest and just
yeah,
take it easy. And then as the tour comes around, you'll kind of just maybe warm up the hands just on a pad. You
yeah,
know, it's not, you know, if there's new songs to learn, all right, that's different because then ideally I want to sit behind a kit.
yeah,
But then the kit I've got behind me is not a replica of what I have out on the road. So that's, you know, it's different. But again, it all comes back to that. For me, the key thing is the listening. So I
yeah,
listen and I get it in my head, and I can envisage playing, I can picture playing, I can almost feel playing it. So then when it comes to physically playing it, I've kind of done it mentally already. Which, don't get me wrong, that doesn't necessarily work for every single song. It depends how complex that song is, you
yeah,
know. But you know, if it's not the kit or anything, then I'll just spend some time on a pad. As a kid, I didn't particularly like that kind of thing. Where now, actually, I quite enjoy it. I like just playing some rudiments, and it's nothing flash. I don't go crazy with anything. I just do various things, singles, doubles, quads, and things like that. And then I think it was an old Peter Erskine thing, actually, where you start with singles, then you do doubles, then you do triples, then you do quads, then you go back down and you go back up, and you kind of speed up. And, so it kind of keeps you loose. And then, 5-stroke rolls, 7-stroke rolls. And I don't really go too much past that almost. It just keeps you moving a little bit, But yeah, I'm lucky, actually. When I do play, I don't really have any issues. And if I know people are going to be around, I tend to just knock on the door or see them in the street and say, hey, tomorrow I need to do this. Is that going to be a problem for you? And they'll be like, no, you're cool. Do what you want, So I'm lucky, really, because, yes, it's not always that way for people, is it?
No. And you're off to another tour, the US one?
Yeah, so we've just finished the UK tour, which was 29 dates in 34 days. Then we jetted over to Portugal very quickly to play a festival there called the Costa Festival, which was great. And then in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks today, actually, I'll be in Florida for the first show of, I think it's about 3 weeks worth of tour in the US. So we start in Florida, and then we make our way over via New Orleans through Texas, Arizona, over to California, and then we fly back from LA. So yeah, that's the next one, and then we're home for a couple of weeks, and then we do a week in the Netherlands and Belgium before Christmas.
Oh wow!
So,
and
busy little end to the year.
Do you ever get time off?
Yeah, I mean, do you know, like, this is 2 weeks, which I got to say, after a 5-week tour in the UK, I wish it was maybe a week or two longer. I'm a little tired. Actually, I was speaking to Andy, and the main guy from the band, the original member.
Yeah,
we were on Messenger and stuff yesterday, and I said, I feel like I got jet lag. I said, I feel like I've come back off a flight from LA or something, but no, I mean, we get in the summer we had a 6-week block off just before the UK tour. So we played a festival in the south of France, and then after that we had a 6-week break. So that was nice. But I think the next ones, really, there are only so there's 2 weeks now. Then there's, I think, a 3-week gap, and then we do the week or so in the Netherlands, etc. Then we have a 3-week gap. Then we go back out on the 8th of January or the 9th of January, I think it is, out to Europe to do Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, and Luxembourg, I think. So that's kind of a busy schedule. Then we come back, and then we go back out to the States. Then we come back, and I think there's plans to do shows in France and various other places. So yeah, I think the next kind of big gap I'll get is probably next summer. But
and are you releasing any more albums in 2020? Not 2020.
So we just,
with the live album.
Yeah, so we just did the Live Dates live album, which that's really cool. So that's the first Wishbone album I've appeared on. So that's the live album. So that was recorded in July of 2022, which is a great thing for me, actually, to have as a point in my time with the band.
Yeah,
because I was still in my infancy with the band there. I was still really not so much finding my feet, but I guess you could say finding my feet. Maybe my confidence in myself, my own ability to do that job, because that's the other thing people kind of forget. It is a job, and like any job, when you start it, you don't just start a job and instantly be great at anything. You have to learn, you have to take time, and you make mistakes, and you doubt. Again, it all comes back. You have doubts, you have worries, you all have these things. And so that was the July. So I'd started in the February, and in July, there I am at Daryl's house in New York. We're going to record a live album, one shot, one chance. It wasn't like we did 3 nights there and we could take the best recordings out of all of them. It was just, right, that's it. And I'm there thinking, what? Like, oh my God. But we played it, and it was great. So now I listen to it and I think, I don't do that anymore. And there's a couple of things I don't do, and I go, I really should do. That sounded much better than what I do now. But then there are things where I'm like, oh, actually, I'm glad I've changed that. I've moved on. So it's great. So I listen back on it. There's nothing that I think is terrible or this, but then there's things that you can learn from. So what I'm hoping is that in time, then there's another live album, and I can go, well, that was me, you know, in 2022, and then that's me in 24 or 25 or whatever it is. So yeah, so that album is basically what we will tour and kind of celebrate right through to the UK tour, I think, next year. And then there's no official plans for anything new record wise or anything, but there's certainly talk about the idea, you know, about the possibility of doing some new music. But because when you're busy touring and doing shows, when do you actually get a chance to sit down and write the songs and even try to put things together? So
This is true.
You know, that's part of the problem. But yeah, you know, it's not being ruled out, put it that way.
So so you are the only member from the north?
No, so Mark, the guitarist, lives about 20 minutes away from me.
Okay.
So Mark and I are like the terrible twins. We you know, Bob and Lorna in the band, they call us the children, because we're like the you know, we go out and we go drinking and finding curry houses, and you know, we rip it up a little bit, you know, although maybe not quite as much as we did when we were 20 something, but we still have a good go. But so no, Mark and I live very, very close together. So that's great actually, because that means we travel together, and you know, we're always hanging out, you know, so it's quite nice.
And beyond the tour, which ends next year, what's the what would you like to do, music, otherwise, whatever, going forward?
Yeah. Do you know what? It's funny. I mean, the band is so busy, there's kind of not loads of time for that. But I have started just even before the UK tour, when I had that 6-week kind of gap, I was writing some tunes myself. I was playing quite a lot of guitar and piano, actually, not so much drums. So I started to, you know, write a little bit with this idea, well, there might be new songs. So maybe I'll start trying to put some ideas together. And then when I was with Mark during the tour, he'd actually done the same. There was some ideas he had. So certainly I enjoy that. I enjoy the creativity of recording. And of course, it's so easy to record now in terms of being able to put something, you know, on Reaper or Pro Tools, whatever people use. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy just writing things down and recording stuff, and then going back to it. So I'd certainly want to do more of that. I started doing a little bit of teaching actually as well. Just, you know, kind of, it's funny. The teaching thing is, you know, when you're away for blocks of time, that's very difficult, because you can't commit to people. So what I tended to do is I've been teaching with some adults, because an adult obviously is, they understand, you know, the whole work situation. You know, with kids, that's not so easy to do, because I think you need to be committed to a kid in terms of it needs to be more of a regular thing. So it wouldn't be right to give a kid a string of 5 or 6 lessons and then say, oh, by the way, I'm now away for a month. That doesn't work so well. But I'd certainly like to do a little bit more, you know, teaching and that kind of thing. So I enjoy that. It's I think it makes you a better player. You know, teaching, it helps me improve, you know, because if you're going to teach something, you've got to make sure you've got it right. You know, you're responsible for that person, you know, taking that forward with them. So I guess there's that. And then I don't know, you know, I'm kind of open to all sorts of things. If I'm around and, you know, people are desperate, you know, there's even the depth thing. If somebody rang me now and said, hey, can you play such and such? And I was around, I'd be like, hey, all right, what is it? You know, I like playing. So, you know, yeah, who knows?
I like playing as well. I still haven't managed to quite find I haven't managed to find myself in a project yet, but hoping.
Yeah. Do you know, hey, look at what happened to me. You know, I didn't expect to join Wishbone Ash, but that phone call came and here I am. So, you know, I think the key thing is with stuff like that is just, you know, just carry on enjoying music and enjoy playing the instrument. And then actually, if an opportunity does arise, one that you either seek or create yourself, or one that just seems to find its way towards you, you know, then you're ready. I mean, that's, I think probably the key thing of anything, you know, is preparation. Be constantly prepared, you know, and just playing and listening to music is a pleasure. And if you do that, then you will find yourself prepared in some form, not necessarily for that particular gig or that particular moment, but generally you will be prepared in some form because of how you go about what you do in terms of listening and playing. So, so yeah, you know, never. But again, it's all that thing, I guess. Never give up. Have a bad day here and there, but never give up.
No, never give up. That I'm always telling my students that. But the great pleasure I have when my student comes to me and does something I don't know about. I didn't know how to do that, and that's for me. That's my success when he
Yeah,
starts teaching me.
but it's cool. Yeah, I think teaching is a really good thing to do in life. Whether it's an instrument or anything, if you can pass knowledge on to somebody or help somebody,
Yeah,
that's really what teaching is fundamentally. I think you're basically helping somebody. And I don't think necessarily people think about it like that too much, but that is your role as a teacher, is to help somebody do something better. And sometimes your role as a teacher probably doesn't even have anything to do with drums necessarily. Sometimes it can. I mean, my drum teacher still is awesome, and not only did he teach me how to play drums, but he kind of looked out for me in life. We'd chat and we'd just talk about life or something that was bugging me or problems, or was I okay? Was I happy? Was I not happy? Why wasn't I happy? Why? Because if you're not happy and you're pissed off or something's going wrong, the chances are then that goes on to the kit, and sometimes that can be a really good thing. You can be piddled off and angry and you can go knock 7 bells out of a drum kit, and that's great. But sometimes it stops you doing what you need to do. So I think
yeah.
that's the other great role as a teacher, is to be there, just for your student in general, really. And I've always enjoyed that side of teaching. It's a cool thing to be able to do, isn't it?
It is. My students range from the ages of 7 when I started
Yeah.
to the oldest one is pushing 60.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? When people start when they're older, I think sometimes kids want to do it a lot, but don't necessarily always want to practice. That was my camp, I guess. My teacher would definitely verify that.
yeah,
You practice, you play, but do you practice, is what he used to say to me. And then you get the older guys that will practice all day long, but they don't really believe they can do it because they think their age is a factor.
yes,
And then you have to kind of beat that out of them and say, all right, you might learn a bit slower, you might find it a bit harder. That's life. The brain slows down, all those kind of things. But if you keep telling yourself that, you're already starting on the back foot. So get rid of the negative stuff and start, working at it. And then actually when it clicks for them, it's awesome. It's great when you see it really work for people. It's cool.
Would we be able to hear a bit of your one of your own songs?
I don't have anything wired up, no. So I don't have anything here to be able to play it to you. So you'll have to watch the space, see what happens to them. But yeah, they're kind of getting there. I think it will be hopefully, one or two might get used in the future with the band. But yeah, no, I don't have anything wired up at the moment, so I can't even play it. But
If have you considered solo career? I know you've done backwards. So you started working in your younger years, 20s and stuff, and then you joined a band in your 40s, when
yeah.
most young people join the band and then they go on solo tour.
Yeah.
So have you got any plans for that?
No, nothing like that. I mean, do you know what I mean? For me, I like being in a band. As far as anything solo is concerned, I mean, in terms of writing, I enjoy doing it, but I don't think I would be a performer per se, in terms of a solo act away from a drum kit. I mean, never say never, but I like the idea of writing and those songs being recorded by somebody else. I like that idea. So that could be something for the future, maybe. But in terms of the playing side, yeah, I think I'd always like to be in a band. It doesn't necessarily have to be,
Yep.
a Wishbone Ash or a whatever, just in a group, should I say, so even if that's playing for a solo artist, but always just be, I mean, ultimately a band's a band, isn't it? But it's,
A band,
so
yeah.
yeah, I just, as long as I'm doing that, I think I'll be a happy camper. And then I guess the only thing really solo wise you can do, not only, but, I'd certainly be open to, there's, kind of trade show kind of things. And, the stuff that I was doing when I was in the industry, you'd see people like the UK drum show, people would play on stages and all that kind of stuff.
Were you at the drum show?
No, because I was on tour, so
Ah.
I missed it, unfortunately. Yeah, that's but next year I think we're touring the UK a bit later, so hopefully I can go to the drum show.
You've got any plans to go to NAMM as well next year?
No, I've done NAMM a handful of times when I worked for Yamaha. So I've done it. I've got the T-shirt. I've got several T-shirts. But no, I mean, we'll be on tour in Germany when NAMM's on. So yeah, it can be tricky sometimes to like hook up with those things. But I that's certainly something that if the opportunity arose, I'd grab it if I was able to do it, purely because, yeah, I've seen those shows from a different
You've seen the show. You've seen the shows from a retailer.
Yeah, trade point of view, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But have artists? I mean, have manufacturers paid you to take their gear, or
No, everything I play is all of my own expense and own thing. And I get, to be honest,
I'm surprised Pearl wasn't. I'm surprised Pearl wouldn't have been the.
Yeah, do you know? I mean, it's funny. I mean, the thing is with when I joined the band. I mean, first of all, when you join a band and you've got no real history behind you, other than obviously I have a history in terms of working in the trade. You know, I mean, when I was working in the trade, you'd get things given to you all the time where people wanted something for free or endorsed it, and you just can't help everybody. It just doesn't work like that. You know, ultimately it comes out of a pot of money. You know, so I knew that. When I first joined Wishbone, I knew people weren't just going to flood and go, "Oh, Mike, you know, suddenly we'll give you a drum kit and loads of cymbals." And I mean, the industry had changed a lot over the years anyway. That wasn't happening even for some of the biggest names. You know, it wasn't like drum kits were just being shelled out left, right, and center. So, you know, I knew that wasn't gonna be the case to start with. So when it came to buying my first kit, I needed to get sorted was for America. So I reached out to Pearl. Well, actually, first of all, I was still at Yamaha at the time, but Yamaha had nothing in stock, literally because of the COVID thing and problems with production. They had no drums. And so I was like, well, okay, that's disappointing. But if I'm not going to play Yamaha, then I would want to play Pearl. And which has always been my preference, actually. I mean, I've just been lucky to work for the two companies that in my opinion, make the best drums. You know, I love them. They're great. I mean, there's other great drums out there. But,
I know Pearl are rather heavy. Their kits are right.
Depends on the drum, I guess, really. But yeah, there is, you know, sometimes a bit of weight. The hardware that they use is always, you know, pretty solid. But then, you know, if you're touring with a drum kit, a Pearl kit, a Yamaha kit, they just live. They just, you know, I mean, I've dropped them. I've had all sorts of things going with kits and they just survive, you know. So the kit I got for America, actually, I reached out to the guys at Pearl and I mean, they did me a ridiculous deal on that kit. You know, they couldn't give it to me for nothing, but I paid nowhere near, you know. So I was really lucky with those guys out there. They really helped me out at Pearl Corporation. So that was a kit I got there. And then over here, funnily enough, the guy who I'd sold the drum kit to was from the shop Drummers On down in Cardiff.
Right.
An old friend of mine, Dan Humphreys. And I was like looking around and I saw this drum kit on his website. And it was exactly the same drum kit that I'd sold him. You know, that he'd bought my drum kit previously, right? Which was a pink champagne, 10, 12, 14, 16, 22 by 14. And I'm thinking, I won't find that kit again. And I thought, is that my kit? You know, so I messaged him and I said, is that my? And he said, well, no, it's exactly the same sizes. But when we got your kit, it sold so well, we've ordered more and sold more. And I said, right. I said, well, I'd like to buy the kit, you know? So he did me a great deal on it. And so I ended up replacing the kit I'd sold when my Teddies had come out the pram those years ago. I ended up buying exactly the same size kit. But the benefit of doing it that way, I ended up with a great deal because my friends had looked after me. But you're also keeping it and supporting your retailers and your local stores and all that kind of stuff, which is important to do. You know, it's, everybody wants a deal. Everybody wants to, you know, save some money, but, you know, it's important to use those guys. So, you know, last year when we were touring, I bought a couple of snare drums from Dan as well. Nice Ludwig 402 and a Hendrix 14x7 beat shell, which I use now out on the tours. So yeah, so I mean, then symbol wise, it's UFIP. But again, that's just symbols. I've owned those symbols for 15 years.
Never heard of them.
UFIP, they're an Italian brand. They're really old. I actually think UFIP are older than Zildjian. They've been around for a long time.
Zildjian 1693. That was when they.
That's when they kicked off. So I think UFIP were even before that, possibly, or they've certainly been around a long time. But yeah, they're not as big in terms of the name. People, but I don't think they market in the same way. They don't have the the finances to do that, or have chosen not to do that. I don't know. I don't know what the history is behind that. But they are incredible symbols. They use a method called rotocasting, which is a bit different to how other people make it. So it's quite a cool thing. If you look at it online, you'll find videos of how they make the symbols. And they're great. So I've used those, for a long time. I've still got Zildjians and various other things, but it's so yeah, I use those. I mean, don't get me wrong, if they wanted to start throwing symbols at me to use, I'd be more than grateful, because your nightmare is breaking one, isn't it? Particularly after 15 years of the same set, it's and then really the people I actually have had a lot of support of is Didario. Didario have been really great with Pro Mark sticks and Evans heads and that stuff. They've been really, really cool. Again, it's nothing for free, but they really look after with artist price and stuff. So they've been super supportive. And Shaw gave me all my in-ears and stuff. So so yeah, there's there is support out there. It's and it's great when you get it, but I think the key thing is you can't expect it. Doesn't matter who you are, what level you're at, you can't expect support, because it all comes out of big old marketing pot, basically, which again is the benefit. I know that because I was on that side of things, so I know how all that works. So if you do get something for nothing or a good deal on something, be grateful for it. Yeah. But at the same time, if not, and you have to go to your retailer, that's not a bad thing either, because otherwise, when I started working in the drum industry, I was visiting 4 or 5 drum stores a day, drum stores or music shops with drum departments, right? So that could be anything where you'd go in and you'd sell maybe a couple of Pearl exports and some boom stands, right through to the Wembley Musics or the Electro Musics in Doncaster, as they were, Shearers in Leeds, all the Birmingham Drum Centre, but now a lot of these people are gone. They're not here. The Shearers doesn't exist anymore. Drumright doesn't exist anymore. Birmingham Drum Centre doesn't exist anymore. Drum Central does in Scotland. Actually, it's in Edinburgh, but they had 2 stores. Now they're down to 1. So it's too easy to lose these places if we don't use them, really. So it's yeah.
Thank you, Mike. And good luck on your next tour.
Thank you, mate.
And enjoy the rest before the madness starts.
Yeah, 2 weeks to rest my fingers and my arms and my legs. Yes. No, it'll be nice. 2 weeks at home, just chilling out and spending some time with the family, and then out to sunny Florida. So luckily I get summer again. I go back to summer, so that's quite good.
Yes. Will you be recording any? Will you be taking drum cams again?
Yeah, I'll keep the drum cam thing going on. Actually, that seems to go down quite well. So I'm looking to expand on that. I set up a YouTube channel, so I started putting things up on there as well. So I'll keep doing the drum cam thing, and then over time I'm looking to just improve how I do that. Because I just started it originally just as a bit of I'll do some drum cam thing. And so I mean, a lot of it was sometimes for me just to look back at the recording of me, and just go, what did I do there, or how was that, or what happened with that? And then I decided to put some up, and then my brother had said, well, you should maybe do that. You should maybe put them on YouTube. And I'm like, well, no, I don't really need to do that. I'm not fussed. And then, so one thing led to another. So yeah, I'll be doing more of that, and hopefully, I'll improve on it and make it better. Yeah.
Wish you luck for the next leg of your tour, and looking forward to having another conversation with you.
Yeah, no problem, mate. I'll look forward to it. All right.